everybody. Q here with another special edition of Press Play. Recently, we have been interviewing filmmakers and talking about films from the Dances with Films Film Festival. And today, I am greeted by another amazing filmmaker. I have Melissa Gregory Rue. Hello, Melissa. How are you?
Hi, Quentin. I'm hanging in, doing okay. I think that we're all feeling rattled today after the shooting in Texas and the shooting in Buffalo before that. And I just have to say, yeah, we've got to take some action in this country and start helping people with mental illness, and we've got to do something about gun control. So that I just had to get that off my chest before we talk, because I feel like everybody we have to stop acting like it's normal. I think that's
Definitely.
So
Yeah, fully agreed. I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate the sentiment. I know we definitely agree here at Project Nerd that there definitely needs to be, um, you know, some reform of some sort going on. Obviously, gun control is one issue, but I think another issue that ties kind of directly to that, and I think is a relatively solid kind of talking point, especially regarding the content of your film, which deals a lot with homelessness and working with people of a marginalized group. I think that, one of the other big things that these shootings, these tragedies have us looking at is mental health and how that's handled in the United States in general, and just with people. Is it handled with compassion? Are we giving people tools to kind of overcome some of those situations? Because I know a lot of times mental health can directly lead to homelessness in a lot of situations. And so I'd love to kind of dive into your film in particular, which is called Live Out Loud, and deals with a homeless population, a group of homeless people participating in a film education program. And kind of talk to me a little bit about where that came from, how that started, kind of what was the spark for that.
Well, I was finishing a project with one of the people who became an artist in residence on the program. And when he told me what was going on and they got a grant and I just thought, this sounds amazing. So I just immediately knew that I wanted to film it. And so luckily I went in and I talked to all the folks who were going to do the teaching, and they trusted me to come in. And then on the first day of class, I stood up and I explained to everybody who I was and why I wanted to document the project. And it's exactly what I said. It's because I'm really hoping to inspire other communities to create similar programs. One of the beautiful things that happened is that in addition to learning to make films and starting to heal from childhood trauma that they had experienced, also it just brought them in touch with other communities that, as you were saying, marginalized people are so used to being treated as invisible and treated like they don't matter. They get, they just kind of get walked over, as Samaya says in the film. Sure. And so it was incredible to see how much it increased their self-esteem to be brought into these art settings where you had professors and you had, professional artists from the Portland community, and you had funders and all kinds of people, and all these people who would never come into contact with one another in everyday life. There they were. And so I think this is what our country needs desperately, is to start bringing these disconnected communities together so that they understand one another and they can figure out how to solve problems together.
Yeah, I love that. I think that is spot on. And it's interesting how the art community in general, it being an artist or getting to express art in some fashion is like a validation of your own thoughts, right? Your own feelings. It's saying, hey, my internal perspective is important enough that I can put it out into the world for other people to view. Now, their reception of that may be subjective, but ultimately it's saying, hey, your thoughts, your feelings, your passion, it's valid. And so I think that's such a wonderful thing to do for this community who is so used to feeling invalid. Like you
Mhm.
said, invisible. You're saying, hey, your perspective is valuable. Let's get it out into the world. Let's hear your story.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
I think that that's awesome.
Thank you. I just am so excited. I worked on this film for 10 years. It's been a long road. And so starting to actually get it out in the world is absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
Um, so one of the things I wanted to say, I just
yeah,
went out, yes, about them seeing their stories up on screen. I think all of us who create art know that it's very healing. You know, that I
definitely.
think any artist you would ask would say there is a therapeutic element. That might not be your main reason for making art, but it teaches us about who we are. You know, it helps us work through, like, where have we been, where are we going. It's such an incredibly powerful way to help people. And it, you know, it could be filmmaking, it could be making music, it could be really any type of art. I do think that there are elements of filmmaking that um, are really powerful that other arts don't necessarily bring in. And I think it is that visual element of, like, people, if they do a, say, like Sumaya made a portrait of her life, um, and seeing herself up on the screen, like you were saying, is incredibly validating. And having people say, wow, you've done amazing things with your life. You didn't always just live on the streets, you know.
Exactly.
And that's the case for everybody who's on the streets. Nobody was born on the streets,
Right.
right? So, well, okay, not in the US at this point, and hopefully we won't be going that direction.
Sure.
But you know, so everybody has some other story, and that gets lost, and they just become like, you feel, you know, like completely empty and meaningless. So yes, I
Yeah.
think it's a really powerful way for people to um, turn their lives around.
I love that. And I do want to ask regarding the program that's kind of featured and highlighted in the film, how did you become aware of this program?
Okay, so that's what I was saying. I had a friend who was one of the artists in residence,
Hmm.
and so I think there were about 6 or 7 of them, and a couple other people came in and out during the course of the year. But the core group, I sat down with them and we talked, and they allowed me to come in and then pitch it to the students. So we got really lucky because 3 of the people, well, no, wait, uh, 2 of the people I followed were there from the very beginning and stayed the entire year. And then
Awesome.
Sumaya came in a few classes in, and then she stayed. So it was very strict. It was oddly very obvious who I wanted to follow. And they
Sure.
were, because they were all so different, they were all from completely different backgrounds. And I wanted to make that point, like, you can be a white woman from the West Coast, you know, who grew up in middle class family, or you can be from the Midwest and you're black, and you know, and on and on. So there, yeah. So I think that's important.
Yeah,
People end up homeless from all different. We have bankers who end up homeless.
for
It's
sure.
not funny. I
Definitely.
shouldn't be laughing, but
But
people,
serious, but
yeah,
honest and true.
right,
Uh,
yeah.
I no, I totally agree. So in regards to making this film, is there anything that you were surprised by or learned kind of on your journey? Obviously, 10 years is a labor of love. It's something that has been with you for a long time now. So what kind of stood out about your filmmaking experience on this?
Oh boy. so many things. Let me think. I think that it was emotionally a really challenging experience for me. Because for one thing, I was doing almost everything myself. I shot, I did sound, I was directing. I had an assistant with me one day out of the entire year that I shot. And that was just because of my non-existent budget. And so I had to, I got through it, but my editor, I worked with Kelly Baker, who's awesome. He talked to me, we talked about it, and he said, Melissa, you realize you can never make another film like this, right? He said, I made a film I went into prison on one of my first films and did some work with men in prison. And then that was it. And I think there's a big conversation going on about this actually now in the documentary community about the toll of, I forget there's a term for it, but like secondhand trauma. It's like, as you're making the story and experiencing other people's trauma, that can seep into your own being. And especially with people who are going into, war-torn areas and places where really horrific atrocities are happening, or where school shootings are happening, or, so we all have to we're learning as a community how to take care of ourselves, because we have to take care of our own mental health too,
Sure.
So I think, yes, I don't think that I'll make another film. I'll never make another film this way. This is what I would say. I would have help. I would have more support, and I would have more funding, and I would definitely probably not do a full year unless I had a lot of funding and a lot of help. And I just have always I've always loved to be challenged. And so,
this is a challenge.
This was definitely a challenge. Yeah. So, but yeah,
well,
that's a big learning thing right there.
Yeah. I appreciate you being candid about that. That makes a lot of sense. 100%. In regards to, we spoke a lot about not doing something like this again. That begs the question of, okay, then what do you do post this? So what is on the horizon? What kind of thoughts do you have? What's culminating? What's percolating, as they say?
Well, yes, so at the, let's see, along the path of making this film, I became very ill, and I was terrified I had a brain tumor or something, because I was having speech problems and memory problems, and and I started having trouble walking. So then I thought, oh my God, I have MS. So it turned out that I had undiagnosed Lyme disease that was in my body for over a decade, just proliferating like crazy. So I ended up getting some treatment for 3 months. This is a whole other story, because Lyme, there's actually a great Lyme disease documentary out called The Quiet Epidemic. It just premiered at Hot Docs. And I know one of the directors, and I've been in conversation with her. So my hope is, what I'd like to do for my next film, I'm going to go into, so I got a lot of relief from my symptoms, and I was able to finish this film over 2 years, but now a lot of things are starting to come back. So I'm planning on trying a kind of a experiment. It's not really experimental in Europe and other countries, but here it's considered experimental. And so I'm going to make a documentary about my experience going through that. And then I've also been talking to some folks in the Lyme community about being a part of it. So I want to I'm not going to do what they already did, but sort of continue the conversation and make myself my favorite teacher in film school always said, you should really turn the camera on yourself. You should tell your story. And I was so resistant. So I want to say, and yay, I'm finally doing it.
Good job. You did it.
It only took a lot. It only took 20 years. I mean, that's it.
Well, I will say that that's a lot. And I have, no one can accuse you of having soft subject matter in your
Yeah.
repertoire. But I appreciate it because I feel like on both occasions, with this film, Living Out Loud, you're exploring kind of a marginalized, not talked about group of people, in a very kind of specific and niche kind of situation and scenario. And then I think that from the sounds of it, with the Lyme kind of discussion, um, I think again you're picking a subject matter that is really kind of like glossed over
Mhm.
and not really talked about a lot, despite how big of an impact it actually has.
Yeah.
Um,
And you know what's it one thing that struck me as I've been thinking about it more, about getting started, I am very curious. It would be interesting for someone to do research and find out how many people who are living on the streets have Lyme disease, because I think it's gonna be shocking when that number actually comes out. So, because untreated Lyme disease and some of the nasty co-infections, in addition to being lethal, some of them can kill you, like Powassan virus. They also, if they go into your brain, they cause neurological symptoms,
wow.
right? So people who we see on the street who have had no access to decent health care, who have had no access to mental health care, some of those people could be carrying Lyme disease.
That's a very, very valid and solid point.
It terrifies me to think about it, actually, and because
That
there's
sounds
no
like a
good.
documentary subject
Yeah,
matter.
yeah. I think that I might be able to partner with somebody, and one of the one of the docs who are really well known, and maybe do something on that. So
Yeah, that's excellent. Well, I appreciate you exploring kind of these dark but also hope-filled places. I think that's one of key. I talked to a filmmaker yesterday, and we talked about the importance of hope, in general, and the importance of, having a heavy subject matter and obviously treating it with respect, but also not being dour or downturn, and instead being, showing that in a lot of these situations, there is a light, whether no matter how small or how large that light is. I think it's important to show that, especially in today's world with everything that people are surrounded by. I think it's important to remind people, hey, these situations are happening, but there's things to be done about it. None of this
mhm.
is too late. None of this is all over. So I appreciate the fact that that seems to be a bit of a through line on your subject matter. I definitely want to push people to go check out the film. It's going to be premiering at the Dances with Films Film Festival. The date, I wrote it down here, June 19th, right at 12:30 is when it'll be playing. It's going to be at the Chinese Theater. If people are familiar with that, it's a huge, a gorgeous theater that I actually incredibly ask that people go and visit, even if it's not for this film festival, just in general. It's a piece of cinema history, and you got to be there at least once. Melissa, is there anywhere else that people can follow you or the film in general to kind of stay up to date on it?
Yes, we are at Live Out Loud documentary on Facebook. And my website is www.melissagregoryrue.com. And the film is called Live Out Loud. Yeah, please come check it out. And I have, let me throw this little tidbit in. So
Please.
one of the central character people in the film is Samaya, is actually now living in Venice Beach in public housing, and she's doing really well, and she will be at the Q&A with me. So I'm excited.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Even more reason for people to come and check the film out.
Yeah,
I love
we're inviting lots of people in the mental health community, and people who provide resources to folks who don't have homes. So there will be
I
a
love
very
that.
good discussion.
I love it. Excellent. Well, Melissa, thank you for spending time with us here on this episode of Press Play. We sincerely appreciate it. We appreciate you. I encourage everyone to go check out this film, check out all the other amazing films playing at Dances with Films Film Festival. And in the meantime, I've been Q. This has been Melissa. We'll point the right way. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys next time. Thanks so much. And
Thank you.
stay tuned.